Good morning. Top of the morning to you. Great to be with you this morning. Are you doing what you need to be doing in order to be the success you want to be? So many people let time pass them by and not pursue the career that they're meant to be. I know my life, business life, began when I was 6 years old. My dad took me out on pecan orchards in South Texas. We thrashed those paper shell pecan trees. We busheled them up, paid the owner for the bushels, and we took them home, sacked them, and sold them for 55 cents a pound. I was excited about that. I cut yards, lawns, neighbors. I was enthusiastic. My dad was a great promoter of me. He was a great dad, very positive about me. He was very negative about himself because he'd come from a home life back in Harlingen that was very depressing. He had lost his dad in a murder situation, and so it left a very bad impression on him about life and opportunities ahead. But he did see a fulfillment in me. He gave me a roadmap. Are you doing the things that you ought to be doing in order to exploit the gifts that you've been given? Realize that we are each one of 7.6 billion people on the planet, and nobody's quite like us. We have a tendency to compare ourselves to others, and if they're doing well, we think lowly of ourselves and that we could never do what they're doing. And that's a tragic mistake, and it's one that you don't want to be a part of. Yes, life can be a fulfillment in a lot of ways, but it can also be a very much of a hardship in a lot of other ways. These are things that are totally unnecessary. And so this is why you will see in the podcast, today's and those following over the next 20 weeks, opportunities to have a roadmap of success, get through the inevitable setbacks within every career. I had a great mentor named Mort Utley who told me that if people would do what they naturally should do and follow through with the setbacks, learn from the setbacks, that we'd be much better off and we would gain and grow to higher heights than we could ever imagine. And this has been true in my life. I started out in the pecan business. I had a paper route. I also started charting my dad's corn and soybean charts when I was 12 years old, and I fell in love with that business. But really, overall, the greatest business to me was baseball. I started as a 6-year-old in the minor leagues, little leagues, pony league, Colt League, and American Legion. And I had a dream of being a professional baseball player someday. I watched every weekend Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Roger Maris, all of the great baseball players of the time. And it inspired me. I got excited about it. And so I thought I'd go ahead and go to college and be a professional baseball player when I got out. Well, my first year in college, I did make the team. I went to Auburn University and I got cleated. I was the catcher. I got cleated and it was a rusty cleat and it affected my left tibia. Well, it developed into a bone disease they call osteomyelitis. Well, osteomyelitis at that time did not have a cure. You could only arrest it. And so I had to drop out of college for 2 quarters. Auburn was on the quarter system. And that was a tremendous setback. It was a very big of a hurt that I never anticipated. And it was part of the business, of pursuing my career in baseball. Well, I had the 2 operations, and of course at that particular time, the Vietnam War was underway. And if you dropped out of college, you immediately were drafted. You were called to war. Well, I showed up to the draft board 2 different times, 2 different quarters that I dropped out, and they obviously labeled me as 4F. I was not qualified to be in the draft, was not qualified to be in the service. So I went back. I had 2 years under my belt at Auburn, so I decided to go ahead and finish. Might as well stay with it. I got a degree in liberal arts. We didn't have a school of business at that time at Auburn. And so during the process, I did connect with another opportunity that I'll tell you about later, and it led me to a 19-year career that I had no idea about. But the point is, to handle setbacks as opportunity to learn. There's so much to be gained. Now, what happens? What you do when you have a setback, a discouraging moment, you don't necessarily leave to get away from something. You leave to go to something that's better. And your reach should always be higher than your grasp. That's something that Thomas Watson, founder of IBM, once said. Reach for the stars. You may not make the stars, but at least you know you won't come up with a handful of mud. And that's what he told his staff. And that's what they pursued and had the dream in their mind of becoming great corporation as they had begun. And so what I did, I went back to school, got my degree, and went out and pursued another business that I'll tell you about in another podcast. But it's important to have a purpose in life. If you need to write down your purpose, and that way you know that what your destiny will be. Now, certainly some people say, well, my purpose is to go out and earn a living, to make house payments and to make car payments, put the kids through school. Well, that's an admirable feature, and that's an admirable contribution to your family. But that's not what we're talking about when we say purpose. Purpose is pursuing a dream, an emotional aspect. I know when I was in the paper business, paper route business, I had a purpose of delivering papers, and I wouldn't want to let people down because I knew they were waiting on their paper. Many of them were out on the porch waiting on me to give them a paper that evening. I delivered papers after school, and it gave me a great fulfillment to know that they were looking for the paper and I was there with their paper to give them. And that was a great purpose. Yes, I appreciated making the money, and I did make some money and accumulated more money than most students would. But that was not necessarily my purpose. And then the second thing is to have goals. You have a purpose, and then you got to have goals as to your destiny. And your reach should always be higher than your grasp, as we previously said. And my goal was a certain number of clients, certain number of customers. And I had over 212 customers and 214 at different times. And that was a great goal. And it occupied over an hour and a half a day after my high school let me out. And then you need to put your purpose, your goals into action. Unrewarded talent is almost a proverb. It's motivation is more important than talent. Do your problems, do your setbacks, do they discourage you in a way that causes you to go in another direction or to doubt what you're doing? If it does, if there are those kind of issues with you in your mind, then that's the reason I wrote the book that I did, The Winning Advantage, Tap Into Your Richest Resources. And it's on the winningadvantage.com, my website. But let's talk more about our purpose, our goals, and implementation. Now, after being introduced to futures with my dad when I was 12 years old, I charted his stocks, like I had mentioned. But then I had a dream also, and it was baseball. But I followed Dad to the broker's office, sat in the offices, watched him, and I watched the broker talk about the different aspects about investing in stocks. And he talked about diversification. Well, my dad asked a lot of worthy questions to find out more details about what he was talking about. And that was very interesting to me. I was very much enamored when I was a young boy. A lot of times in the summertime, I would go down to Harlingen, Texas, and visit my grandmother. She had a purpose. She went out on Avon. She worked 40 years in the Avon business. And I went with her and went house to house, went in and sat and was very quiet. I observed what she was doing. She asked questions. She gave illustrations, demonstrations of the different products. And they liked her a lot. And she was, like I said, over 40 years in the business. And she loved the business. And she taught me a lot about going inside of people's homes. And I felt very comfortable with that after a while. And I went down many summers to visit her for 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time. And she was very much of an inspiration to me. I really loved what she was doing. And that gave me a great inspiration. And when my setback, I got hurt in college, as I mentioned, it led me into the book business because a year later, a friend told me about a person interviewing to go out and sell books door to door. Well, I was very much open to that because I've been with my grandmother going door to door and sitting in with her. And so that looked like a natural theme to me. And so I ended up being in that business 19 years. And there were many, many setbacks. No, I didn't wake up every morning. Those summers that we sold books, and they were sold in the summertime, college students only, I didn't wake up and say to myself, oh boy, good, I'm gonna go out today and have 55 doors, slammed to my face. There were so many people that slammed their doors in the face because they didn't invite you over and they didn't want any. And matter of fact, during my first summer, went up to Dixon, Illinois, a guy took me by the arm, walked me down his driveway and put me on the edge of the street and looked me square in the eye and said, don't you ever come back to this house again. Well, that could have been a setback, a discouraging point that I could have gone and gotten on a Greyhound bus and headed back home and said, this just isn't for me. No, I looked around that. I did not let that bother me. Now, I did cry. I did cry somewhat on the corner. But after I wiped myself the tears away, I ran to the next house and put a smile on my face because I had a purpose. I wanted to put these special books, they were Webster student handbooks with a synopsis of school subjects in the back. I wanted to put them in people's homes because I know that they would really help out. And that was my purpose of fulfillment. And I continued. And lo and behold, I was in that business for 19 years. The last 11 were my own company that ended up selling to hedge fund. And the rest is history on that one. But there were many, many setbacks. I had teams of students that I had recruited, and many of them, some of them could not make it. They went home early. And that did not bother me because I was sad that they went home, and I was sorry for them. But it didn't bother me on my own personal production, my own personal performance, because I had a purpose. I had a way that I need to go about it. So don't let time waste you away. Time is passing, and life is awful short. And so it's very important that we fill the first person with an aspiration, with a goal, and that's you. It's all too easy to let time pass you by and to let your natural talent and abilities wither away. And this is not necessary, and it's not healthy for that to happen to any of us. And do you have talents and abilities that you're not using right now? Have you had some setbacks in your business? Do you know for sure about how you have gained from those setbacks? Have you listed the different reasons for the setbacks and what you gained from having gone through them? This is different things that we'll be covering over the next 19 weeks of this podcast. If there are some setbacks, if you need a guideline, if you know you have talent and abilities that you're not using, pick up a copy of my book, The Winning Advantage, Tap Into Your Richest Resources. It's on Amazon. Nice talking to you. Be looking forward to talking to you next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Thank you. Use your talents, embrace your abilities, and pick up a copy of my book. Click the link on my website, thewinningadvantage.com, and purchase one of my books on Amazon. See you next week, Tuesday, 9 o'clock.